Well, take a moment to stretch and turn around and smile at somebody. Make them wonder what you've been up to. A little stretch here and there. Yeah. You guys doing okay in Zoom land? Yeah, great. Okay, I just found the clock. It's right there. That's a good sign because I'm used to that one up there and that wall is blank. So I'll just go ahead and state how uncomfortable I was until I found the clock. It's right there. I can see it. Because God forbid that I had talked on 9:30. I'm glad you're here. Tonight's the second talk in our series on the three trainings of the Noble Eightfold Path. And my talk is Sila, Sticks and Stones. Sila, Sticks and Stones. Sila, to review the Noble Eightfold Path, is moral discipline. That's right speech, right action, and right livelihood. That's what we'll be talking about tonight, those three. And then samadhi, concentration, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And pana, wisdom, which is right view, right intention. And those are the three. I think, there we go. If everybody, I haven't muted you. If you guys can mute yourselves, that would be lovely. Thank you. Did y'all hear that coming through? Y'all got some good ears. Good job. Started in the series last week with an overview, and tonight I'm going to share some thoughts on morality, ethics, and right conduct. Moral discipline is considered as a foundation for all higher spiritual attainments, and it's the foundation that gives a base for one to integrate the other trainings of faith. So I'm not sure how to do that. I'm sorry, give me just a second. That better? Thank you. So I want to look at the two words moral and discipline. By definition, moral refers to principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character, about a person's standards of behavior or belief concerning what is and not acceptable for them to do. The other word, discipline, is an important word when it comes to the Four Noble Truths and walking the Eightfold Path. What do you think of when you hear the word discipline? Somebody got some pictures. I can see it on your face. That's a good thing. I go back to the 8th grade and I see the face of a guy I'll call Eddie K in shop class. He would not stop picking on a kid who was having trouble cutting with a jigsaw. Kept making fun of him, told him what a klutz he was, until finally the teacher said he needed some discipline. Well, now discipline in shop class came in the form of the first thing we learned to make. Can you guess what it was? Paddle. We have a winner. Tell him what he won. It wasn't the first time Eddie K received discipline in shop class, and it would not be the last time. But we know he received it out in the hall because we heard it. We heard discipline. One definition of discipline is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of conduct using punishment to correct disobedience. We heard punishment. But discipline is also a branch of knowledge, typically in higher education. Clinically, a discipline can refer to a specific division of healthcare. My disciplines where I work at hospice are spiritual care and grief care. Those are my disciplines. As we think about moral discipline, a good definition is this: to train oneself to do something in a controlled and disciplined way. Train yourself, discipline yourself. Verse 183 of the Dhammapada: not to do any evil, to cultivate good, to purify one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Another definition of moral discipline is a virtuous determination to abandon non-virtuous action. A virtuous determination to abandon non-virtuous action. In his book, The Noble Eightfold Path, Way to the End of Suffering, and I got these set up here. If you see a book you want to look at, you can come take a picture. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who is a prominent Buddhist scholar, writes, the essences of the Buddhist teaching can be summed up in two principles: Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. The first covers the side of doctrine, and the primary response it elicits is understanding, that we understand doctrine. The second covers the side of discipline, in the broadest sense of that word, and the primary response it calls for is practice. So think of it this way: doctrine, the Four Noble Truths, elicits understanding. Discipline, the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, calls for practice. And Bhikkhu Bodhi goes on to write that to follow the Noble Eightfold Path is a matter of practice rather than intellectual knowledge. But to apply the path correctly, it has to be properly understood. So, in other words, walking the path is what brings the teachings to life. You can learn the teachings, you can know the teachings, but it's in that walk that they come to life. There have been many times when I've been asked, and you probably have too, how's your practice going? My mind usually goes straight to meditation. How's my meditation been going? But as I reflected on these words from Bhikkhu Bodhi, the question of how my practice is going gives me an opportunity to reflect on how am I working in a disciplined way to follow the Noble Eightfold Path, particularly in the area of Sila: right speech, right action, right livelihood. I'm going to tell you how to remember those. S-A-L. You just think of my little sister whose nickname was Sal. S-A-L. Speech, action, livelihood. Thanks, sis. In the Samyutta Nikaya 47.3, we read about a time when a monk approached the Buddha and asked for the training in brief. Give it to me in a hurry. So here is the Blinkist version. The Buddha told him, first, establish yourself in the starting point of wholesome states, that is, in purified moral discipline and in right view. Then when your moral discipline is purified and your view is straight, you should practice the four foundations of mindfulness. Doesn't that sound just way too easy? That's all you got to do. Sila was important in the early days of the Buddhist teaching because the early disciples of the Buddha were highly devoted spiritually. They had developed a spirituality. They had little need for a set of rules to be imposed on them. But as the monastic order grew in numbers, it attracted some who were not so highly developed spiritually and didn't know the teachings of the Dharma. So what the teachings on Sila did in this group as it grew and grew was to create harmony. It created a trusted environment that allowed them to live together. An environment where the emphasis was on abstinence from the unwholesome and commitment to the wholesome. So let's look at each of these three individually, and we'll start with right speech. Right speech, there are four types of speech described. The first, abstaining from false speech, then abstaining from slanderous speech, abstaining from harsh speech, and abstaining from idle chatter. False speech is simply lying. George Washington couldn't, but so many can. And lying disrupts the atmosphere of mutual trust and can damage to the point of disrupting or even ending relationships. And it certainly is a discord to harmony. If I asked Danny to come up and play a discord on here, you would be like, yeah. That's kind of what lying does. Mark Twain, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. In the Anguttara Nikaya 10:176, the Buddha is reported to have said, herein someone avoids false speech and abstains from it. He speaks the truth, is devoted to the truth, reliable, worthy of confidence, not a deceiver of people. Being at a meeting or amongst people or in the midst of his relatives or in a society or a king's court and called upon and asked as witness to tell what he knows, he answers, if he knows nothing, I know nothing. And if he knows, he answers, I know. If he has seen nothing, he answers, I've seen nothing. And if he has seen, he answers, I have seen. Thus, he never knowingly speaks a lie, either for the sake of his own advantage or for the sake of another person's advantage. So that's false speech. Slanderous speech has the intent to alienate one person of a group from another. Again, from the Anguttara Nikaya, excuse me. He avoids slanderous speech and abstains from it. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there so as to cause dissension there. And what he's heard there, he does not repeat here so as to cause dissension here. Thus, he unites those who are divided, and those that are united, he encourages. Concord gladdens him. He delights and rejoices in concord. And it is concord that he spreads by his words. Did y'all ever a long time ago play that game Gossip, where somebody whispers something and then somebody goes and tells somebody else and somebody else, and then at the end the first person says what was said to start with, and it's completely different from what was said at the end? And it seems like, though, sometimes we just like to talk. We don't mean to slander, but did you hear about so-and-so? Joseph Goldstein, in his book Mindfulness, recalls a time where he made up his mind for a month that he was going to go that entire month without talking about anybody, without saying anything about anybody else. And he said his speech was reduced by about 90%. He didn't have anything to say, because that is the pattern that he had gotten into, and we do. But the opposite of slanderous speech is speech that promotes friendship and harmony. And there's that word again, harmony. Harsh speech is speech uttered in anger, intended to cause the hearer pain. From the sutta, he avoids harsh language and abstains from it. He speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, such words as go to the heart, and are courteous, friendly, and agreeable to many. There's several different kinds of harsh speech: abusive speech, insult, and sarcasm can be kind of harsh. Joseph Simmons said, harsh words don't break bones, but they often break hearts. And it's been used in several places at different times in literature, especially in English literature. But do you realize that no one claims the quote, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me? And there's a reason for that, because everyone knows it's not true. Words are powerful. And isn't it wonderful to hear kind words? To hear encouraging words? I really enjoy hearing someone who loves it talk to a dog. You ever thought about that? You're such a good boy. You are such a good boy. Yes, I am. But words can not only motivate, though, they can also tear down. Now, for us sports fans, we know that some of the most motivating words come from a coach. Years ago, the story is told of a coach named Bear Bryant. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Paul Bear Bryant? Well, this was way back when television had first started broadcasting games. It was one of the first games. It was that first season. So you can imagine the television was in a box, black and white. Somebody was probably standing up there with some Reynolds wrap on top of the rabbit ears trying to make sure it came in, but people were watching. Halftime, Alabama's losing 28-0. Bear Bryant knows he needs to motivate his folks. And so he says with his old gravelly voice, boys, I know we're losing. And I know you feel bad about it. And I feel bad too. But what I feel worst about is the fact that your mothers just saw those first 2 quarters of football. And I know how disappointed they must be. The final score was Alabama 35, the opposition 28. He abstains from idle chatter, speaks what's useful, speaks of the Dharma and the discipline. His speech is like a treasure uttered at the right moment. And what I've added here that's not in here, that's part of abstaining from idle chatter, is right listening. You realize that one of the best gifts you can give someone is to be fully present and listen. And this is one of the real benefits in my mind of meditation. Because in meditation, you learn to come back. Your mind might go away, but you learn to come back. Well, that can happen, especially for those of us who do counseling. Sometimes, if your mind goes, you need to bring it back. Because if you're sitting across from a person and they see your body, they think you're there. You might be there, you might not. Right listening is such a gift. Sometimes people are healed by being in the presence of a good listener. So for me, part of right speech is right listening. Right action, abstaining from the taking of life. How much more can we take as a society? War, school shootings, mass killings in public places. I mean, what's happened to our regard for life? And in our society, to me, this is one of the most extreme examples of greed, hatred, and delusion. We're just sort of lost. But the opposite of this is the development of compassion and kindness for other beings. Haven't ordered it yet, but I'm about ready to buy another t-shirt. It says, just be kind. That's all. That's all. The second is abstaining from taking what is not given. From the sutta, he avoids what is not given and abstains from it. What another person possesses of goods in the village or in the wood, that he does not take away with thievish intent. And as we look and think about things that are taken, stolen, I reflected back as I was looking at this talk. When did we start locking our doors? As a teenager, I didn't have a key to the house. I remember coming home from college and not having a key to the house. It was a different time. And Joseph Goldstein, again, in Mindfulness, writes about when they were calling people were coming to retreats there in Massachusetts. The people from bigger cities would express concern that the doors weren't locked. But there was an environment created and there were precepts taken that there would not be stealing. And there wasn't. The counterpart, of course, is honesty. Right action, and I'm running out of time, abstaining from sexual misconduct. He avoids sexual misconduct and abstains from it. He has no intercourse with such persons as are still under the protection of father, mother, brother, sister, or relatives, or with married women, female convicts, lastly, with betrothed girls. And this part of the truth is to promote trust and fidelity. Again, from Bhikkhu Bodhi. When mature, independent people, though unmarried, enter into a sexual relationship through free consent, so long as no other person is intentionally harmed, no breach of the training factor is involved. And I'll let you read further there in the sutta. Right livelihood basically mentions 5 specific kinds of livelihood which bring harm to others and are therefore to be avoided. Dealing in weapons, dealing in living beings, including raising animals for slaughter as well as slave trade, meat production and butchery, in poisons, and in intoxicants. So here again from the Dhammapada 183, to abstain from all evil, to cultivate the good, and to purify one's mind. This is the teachings of the Buddha. We had a retreat. Several of you were here Saturday on the 5 remembrances. And you remember that last of the 5 remembrances. My only true possessions are my actions. Cannot escape their consequences. But you can change some of your actions through efforts to purify your mind. And you do this through the acquisition of discipline. This is how we make progress in the path. As author Barbara McNally wrote, discipline is your relationship with the time you have left.